Hello, my name's Vaughan Elliott and I'm the author of A2 Key for Schools practice tests published by Regency Publishing. Each book contains 6 full practice tests to prepare candidates for the exam. There's also a version which contains the answer key and the listening transcripts. I'd like to talk to you today about the book and I'll give some tips about how to prepare candidates for the exam. First, a few words about me. I've been writing exams for many years now, at all levels from A1 to C2. At the same time, I've continued to teach, preparing my own candidates for Cambridge exams. As a result, I think I have a good understanding of the exam process from both sides. It's obvious that well-prepared candidates perform well in the exam, but it's not just about language proficiency. This is why we have included 6 full practice tests in each book, so that candidates are fully aware and have a good knowledge of the exam format. It's essential that candidates know exactly what each part of the exam involves and requires. This might be in terms of how much time candidates should spend on each part of the test, or, for example, how many words they should write, or what they are allowed or not allowed to write. To assist in your preparation with your candidates for the exam, I'd like to go through the A2 Key for Schools practice test paper and share some tips with you. Let's start first of all with the reading and writing paper. In total, this paper has 7 parts and 32 questions for a total of 60 marks. The reading section has 5 parts with a total of 30 questions, each worth 1 mark. The writing section has 2 parts. Each has 1 question with a maximum of 15 marks for each question. This means there are 30 marks for reading and 30 marks for the writing, so candidates should aim to divide their time equally, 30 minutes for each section. In total, the paper is 60 minutes long, so there's not a lot of time. This means it's important that candidates don't get stuck on a particular part or question. They should not worry if there's a word they don't understand, and should try to work out its meaning from the context, but sometimes they'll just have to move on. In parts 1 to 5, all the questions are worth 1 mark, so it's not the end of the world if they're not sure. But, and this is very important to remember, candidates don't lose points for wrong answers, so if they aren't sure, they should make their best guess. For all parts, candidates should read through the text very quickly to get a general idea of the meaning before they tackle the test part more intensively. In parts 1, 2 and 3, candidates read a text and choose from the correct option. There are always 3 options to choose from. With this type of question, it's always good for candidates to eliminate the ones they are sure are wrong before they choose the correct answer. Here is an example from our book. Which answer would you choose to eliminate first? Parts 4 and 5 test grammar and vocabulary, but again it's important to read the text first to get an idea of the general meaning. As candidates do this, they shouldn't worry about the gaps, but if they have an idea, they're allowed to write on the exam paper, so they can make a note and move on. At the end of these parts, candidates should read the completed text through with their answers in the text and ask themselves, does it sound natural? Now, let's look at the writing in more detail. There are 2 parts in the writing section. Part 1 is an email or a note, and Part 2 is a story. Candidates must answer both these parts. As I said, candidates need to give themselves about 30 minutes for this. It's a good idea for them to divide their time equally and practice writing each part in about 12 to 14 minutes. This will give them a few minutes to check their writing at the end. Candidates don't have to write too many words, 25 or more for the email and 35 or more for the story. It's important candidates spend a couple of minutes planning their answer. Candidates are given rough paper so they can plan and organise the points they have to cover in their writing. Doing this means their answers are well organised. This is one of the criteria for marking the writing. Another very important thing is to make sure that candidates include all the points they are asked to. Candidates will lose points if they miss one out, because the email or note will not have done the job it's supposed to. This is the second marking criteria, content. The final marking criteria is the language they use, the grammar and vocabulary. They need to use interesting and varied language, but should also remember that the exam is not the time to experiment. As I've mentioned, The word count for this is 35 words or more for the story. Many teachers and candidates ask what will happen if they write too many words. Candidates might not lose points if they write too many words, but it might mean that candidates don't have time to check their writing. It also might mean they have gone off topic and aren't keeping to the point of the writing. Candidates might lose points in this case. Try to stick to the requested word count and not write more than, say, 40 words for the email or 50 words for the story. This should be more than enough. Candidates do not have time at the end to transfer their answers to the answer sheets, so they need to do this as they go along, or make sure they leave time to do this at the end. Candidates are told when they have 5 and 10 minutes left, so they must make sure they transfer their answers before the end of the paper. Checking is very important, and when they read it through, candidates should check if they have included all the information, not made silly mistakes, and whether they can improve the language. The candidates I teach aren't allowed to use boring words like good or nice. They should change it to brilliant, wonderful, or pleasant, for example. Let's move on to the listening paper. This has 5 parts and 25 questions. Candidates get 1 mark for each correct answer. The important thing with all the listening tasks is that if candidates don't understand something, they shouldn't panic. They hear all the pieces twice. During the first listening, candidates should try to get the gist and choose the option or answer they think is best, or eliminate one they think is wrong. Before each part, candidates have time to read the questions, so they should use this time, underline the important clues on the exam paper, try to anticipate what they might hear. For example, when candidates are preparing for the exam, they need to listen to as much as possible in English. This might be songs, for example. If they watch a video and there's an English version, watch this. The more they listen, the better their listening skills will become. Finally, candidates should not worry about transferring their answers to the answer sheet in this part. They have 6 minutes at the end to transfer their answers. This is more than enough time. Finally, let's move on to the speaking paper. Many candidates are nervous about this, but in my opinion it's the easiest part, and the part of the exam when they can prepare very effectively. The speaking paper has 2 parts and lasts between 8 and 10 minutes. My general advice is to try to relax. Candidates need to take a deep breath before the exam and try to enjoy it. Candidates do the speaking with another candidate. It doesn't matter if they don't know them. There's no advantage in doing the speaking with a friend. There will be 2 examiners. One will ask the questions and tell candidates what to do, the interlocutor. The other will be marking the test, the assessor. In part 1, the examiner will ask about everyday things, like where candidates are from or what their hobbies are, so it's important to practice different ways of answering the same types of questions. For example, if the candidates get the question, "What do you do in your free time?" the answer, "I play computer games," doesn't sound as impressive to an examiner as, "I don't have much free time because I'm busy at school, but at the weekends when I'm free, I love playing computer games." In part 2, candidates talk together. In the first section of part 2, they're given some pictures all relating to the same topic, and they have to talk about them and say if they like them or not. It's important that they give their opinions, but it's also important that they listen to what their partner is saying and develop their ideas. Candidates should practice saying things like, "I see what you mean. If we do this, we can do this." Or, if they disagree, they can say, "I'm not sure. Don't you think is better?" The examiner will ask a question after a minute or 2 about one of the pictures to finish this section. In the second section of part 2, candidates are asked questions relating to the same topic. If they don't know what to say, they can buy time by saying very natural things like, "I'm not sure, I've never thought about it." A useful phrase is, "It depends," because then they have to give a longer answer. It's important candidates give longer answers in this part of the exam. Also, candidates should relate what they say to their own experience and opinions. It's important to realise that grammar and vocabulary are just one of the marking criteria. This means candidates shouldn't worry if they hear themselves making a mistake. They are also marked on how fluently they speak, their pronunciation, as well as how well they interact with the other candidate, so they need to practice speaking as much as they can. I taught 2 candidates once who only ever spoke to each other in English, inside or outside class. They had no problems with the speaking test. I hope you've enjoyed this summary of the A2 Key for Schools exam, and that some of the tips I've mentioned are useful to you. The more a candidate prepares, the more likely they are to perform better in the exam. This is why I've prepared the A2 Key for Schools practice test book. All I can say now is thank you for watching and good luck with the exam.